Hawks talking Squawk. Field service stories. Man, oh man. Field service was just so intrusive to people. Witnesses knocking on their doors early in the morning on the weekends after folks that worked all week dealing with their kids and their school assignments, projects, or whatever. Just to be annoyed on a Saturday morning by the J-Dubs out there slinging those Watchtower awakes and other J-Dub paraphernalia. I was just thinking about this the other day when I seen a witness couple who are actually the parents of one of my former J-Dub associates. And I started to beat the horn and be like, hey, brother, sister Williams, how are you? But I was like, nah, because the dad always seemed like a jerk anyway. You know what I mean? I knew he was never fond of me. So I was like, fuck you and your son. But I just wonder, is he still in Bethel? Because the last I heard of him, he had got accepted to Bethel. This was back in 2006. This was maybe a couple of years before I left. But that was the last I heard of him. And I'm like, y'all up there in y'all 60s, and y'all still out here going door to door, still bugging folks. Man, I was just thankful that I never had any violent encounters while in the film industry. Then I've heard stories of people being attacked by dogs, people actually sicking their dogs on them. My uncle told me a story about him and some other friends being out and some crazy person tried attacking them. I've heard plenty of stories of people being cussed out. But the most I've ever encountered was people with an attitude. And a lot of times you could sense the attitude just the way they came and opened the door. And, you know, I would be like, hey, I'm just offering you something to read. They would either accept it or say no thank you. If they said no thank you, I kept it moving. I'd say enjoy your day. Keep it moving. Now, it'd be some. I've actually worked with a couple of people that in field service that would actually try to press for conversation and want to keep asking questions. And that's when most of the time they would get the door slammed on them. Then I've had the door slammed on me once or twice. I didn't take it personal. Shit, I might have done the same thing. It'd be a guy, he come to the door, he's dog tired. He might have worked through the night just to be awakened by some J-Dubs hustling them pamphlets. So, but it would be friends that they would get real offended. Naraj especially. Naraj and the homie Lucius, we was out doing door to door. And I was like the third wheel, so I waited at the bottom of the steps when Naraj and Lucius went to the door. And Lucius had his presentation all lined out. And as he was going through the presentation, the person just was like, fuck off, and just slammed the door on him. So when he did that, Naraj goes and knocks on the door, and I'm thinking, what are you doing? But then I started laughing. I'm like, watch, they gonna get aired out real bad. The guy comes to the door, Naraj offers him a pamphlet anyway. He's like, we don't want to take up too much of your time, but we figure we leave this for you to read. When the guy was like, get the fuck off my doorstep, and slammed the door again. Lucy's going to say, it's okay, that's why you're going to get destroyed at Armageddon. Oh, man. But I never took it personal. I'm like, you're intruding on these people, knocking on their doors early on the weekend. But the people that made me laugh would be the people that would come to the door and had some excuse like, oh, I can't talk to you, my cereal's getting soggy, or I don't want my coffee to get cold, or I'm watching cartoons, or something like that, like any excuse just to get us out of there. But hey, I never took it personal and shit, especially me. I had maybe 1 or 2 return visits, and whenever we would be out doing return visits, I would always make it like I ain't really have no return visits, or I would purposely find out somebody's schedule, and if we was doing return visits during a weekday or something, and I knew that individual worked during the week, that's when I would stop by. Then when they don't answer the door or whatever, just leave a track or whatever. Shit, I had no Bible studies, no return visits, just a bunch of not at homes. Matter of fact, I had one return visit that I vividly remember. It was this guy named Marvin. And you knew Marvin used to smoke bud, because every time he came to the door, you just knew he was high. You would smell the weed. And we would chop it up. And then we would just chop it up about different stuff, just about like life in general. Like government fuckery. You know what I mean? Shit going on all over the world. And I always took my cousin Sheaf on this return visit with me. And Sheaf would be engaging with him more about J-Dub related shit than me. I mean, dude never came to the hall. He never accepted a Bible study. But when that was our one return visit, I would always stop in on, because dude, he kicked some serious dollars. He was a good guy. Lived right there in Overbrook Park, which is our territory. I mean, Overbrook Park is about maybe a 10-minute ride from Winfield. So whenever we would do return visits, we would always stop there, and we would chop it up with dude for a good half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes up to an hour, hour and a half. So that was cool with me. That's an easy hour to add on. Shit, because if I talk to you for a half hour, I was putting it down as a whole hour anyway. You know, but that's really the only return visit I vividly remember. Shoot, most of the time when we did return visits, I only got out the car if I had about 1 or 2 returns, or depending on who I was working with, and they'd be like, E, come on this return visit with me. I was always the wingman. I would say maybe a few words, but that was about it. I mean, I think a lot of people knew I wasn't really cut out for this J-Dub shit. A lot of people knew. That's like the brother that baptized me was like, you went under wrong, but it's okay because you're not going to last in this anyway. I mean, I felt some kind of way because I'm like, damn, that's what you think? But at the end of the day, you right. But let's see, we would do return visits, and I'd be like, we might do return visits for 2 hours. Hey, that's easy 2 hours added to my time. My favorite form of witnessing, though, was street witnessing. You know, and I did a video on that a few months back. If you scroll through my channel, you'll see it. I think I did this video probably either back in August or September of last year. It was about the summer of 2003 when auxiliary pioneered. The street witnessing was my favorite thing, and I got majority of my hours those months because auxiliary pioneered June, July, and August. And I logged majority of my hours doing street witnessing. Well, let's see. The people I worked with the most in field service was my cousin Sheaf and my homie Clayton. Last I knew, he was an elder, but he was a ministerial servant around this time and our book study conductor. You know what I mean? He's also a fellow Libra scale. So shout out to all my Libra scales out there. But those were the two guys I worked with the most in field service. You know, majority of the field ministry comes with your book study groups. Now, Sundays after the meeting, I rarely ever went out in field service, even when I was an auxiliary pioneer. I'm like, the summertime, no, it's too hot. During the cooler months, nah, I got to get home and catch these games, whether it be football or basketball. You know, during the week when the circuit overseer visited the congregation, you know, that's when all the friends that average 6-7 hours a month, all of a sudden now, they're meeting with the group every day that week because the circuit overseer's in town. I rarely ever took off from work when the circuit brother came. I think I might have mentioned this in a previous video too. Matter of fact, the only time I would take off during the week, it all depended on who was feeding the brother. Like if my aunt and uncle was hosting the circuit brother for lunch, that's when I took off because I knew the food was going to be on point and everybody was going to be there. Now on the weekend, I was already off, so even then on Sundays, I rarely ever went out. But let's see. These is during the West Park days. Now, once I went to the Northeast congregation, I definitely wasn't logging as much field service time. You know, those brothers up there, they were way more lax and laid back. It didn't really sweat you on your publishing output. You know, you could skip meetings left and right and still have privileges or responsibilities in the congregation. You know, and it was a couple of people I would work with when we would go out in field service when I was going to the Northeast congregation. That was cool with me because I didn't know people in those areas. This is up in the Northeast. Now going to West Park, our territory was Winfield and Overbrook Park. So, you know, I knew people all throughout those territories, and I definitely didn't like doing field service at Winfield. There was one time I did this guy I went to school with. He came to the door and put me on the spot. Thankfully, I was working with Clayton and not somebody that was going to be all Joe and rub it in my face. He came to the dude was like, damn, E, I ain't know you was a J-Dub. The way you be wilding out in school. And I was like, oh my God. This dude was a clown anyway and always ran his mouth. But, you know what I mean? Clayton ain't say nothing. I guess Clayton knew what it was like because he was only a few years older than me and get his little dirt or whatever in high school before he got baptized anyway. It's just that he moved up the J-Dub rankings so quick. I think he might have been baptized like at 15, 16. It's about 21. He was already a ministerial servant and was an elder just before he turned 30. Maybe those first couple years he was baptized, he might have wilded out a little bit, but he never said anything, never brought it up to me or nothing, but it was just embarrassing. And I was like, man. Because nobody in school, except fellow witnesses, knew I was J-Dub. Luckily, I never ran into none of my non-J-Dub homies that I was always with when I was out in service. So I was thankful for that. Now, when I was younger, my younger days, I used to act a fool in field service. You know, it got to the point where the brothers told my mom, it's best that you wait till Eric gets a little older to bring him out in service. I would be out in field service pretending I was a Ninja Turtle, doing roundhouse kicks and back flips, front flips, sideways flips. You know what I mean? Swinging my service bag like it was one of the Turtles' weapons, yelling down manhole covers and shit. Like, Leonardo, where are you? Yeah, I used to wild out in field service. Be out there like pretending I'm dribbling a basketball. I remember one day it was I was about maybe 11. And it was doing the circuit overseer visit. And these kids was playing ball in the street. And the ball came my way. You know the ball, somebody knocked the ball and it came my way. I grabbed the ball and instead of passing it back to the guy, I start dribbling and I'm pretending I'm my Hawkins fam, Hersey Hawkins. I'm like, Hawkins from downtown, swish. That's a 3-pointer from the Hawk. My mom had a fit. You hear me? She had a fit. Like, Eric, you're bringing a reproach on Jehovah's name. I said, well, you should have left me at home then. I ain't want to come out here anyway. I was just thankful that for the most part on the weekends, I was always with my pop. So I don't really have a whole lot of field service memories like most that was brought up during in the J-Dubs as kids. I went out whenever those spare weekends that I might have stayed home, but I was with my pop for the most part on the weekends, so I didn't have to worry about going out in field service. But when I did, man, I hated that. I would pretend to stay asleep and I would give my mom fits. I would get up, I would take my time getting washed and dressed, hoping that we would be late and that we would miss the group. And it would be times that we did miss the group, but my mom would just so happen to track them down. She'd be like, let's see. Last week they was over there on Sherwood Road, so today they might be over there on Brookhaven or some shit, man. But once I got older and I moved back home after my little time ripping and running in the streets in my little boot and hat camp bed. I mean, I still hated going out in field service, but I either was working with Clayton or Cuz O'Sheaf, or sometimes I'd be working with his sister, so I didn't mind. Especially my old head DG. This is the one I did a video on over the summer when I was at the beach about contemplating ending our relationship. I haven't even talked to DG since then, but she had came back to West Park because she grew up in the West Park congregation, but then she went to Bethel and moved to New York. So like around 99, she moved back to Philly and went back to West Park. And we used to work in field service a lot. And me and DG, we used to get it in with that air, smoking that bud. So, and we talked about any and everything but J-Dub related shit. Anything J-Dub we would talk about would be like different people throughout the organization. So I always tried to work with somebody I was cool with. On return visits, it didn't matter. I wasn't getting out the car too much anyway. Yeah, I wasn't getting out the car except to do maybe my little 1 or 2 return visits or accompany somebody on airs. Working with my mom would be the worst though. You know, because she always called us up trying to lecture me on how to give a presentation and not take no for an answer. Like it was one time we was walking down the street and like 4 or 5 guys was walking by. Like big dudes too. And I'm like, man, I ain't fucking with them. I'm by myself too. You know, push come to shove, I'm gonna defend myself. They ain't my peoples, but I was like, nah, I'm not gonna start anything. My mom got mad because I didn't offer them literature. She offered them literature. They was like, no, thank you. And she gonna having her to tell me not to be intimidated by her. I said, it ain't that I was intimidated. It's that these guys look like they didn't want to be bothered. And you could tell they was annoyed just at the presence of us. So, no, I'm not going to further escalate anything if there ain't no need to. Like, you kidding? But the witnesses, they got it sweet now with all the court witnessing. And, man, if we had that, like I said in the previous video, if we had court witnessing, I would auxiliary pioneer it every month. And I would have ate up 40 hours a month easy just sitting at a cart enjoying the fresh air. But let's see, before I wrap it up, do I have any other field service stories? I just hated it. And, you know what I mean, as a kid, to have to get up on Saturday mornings. Like I said, again, thankfully, I was with my pop on the weekends. But it would be a weekend here and there where my mom would keep us home, so we had to go out and field service on a Saturday and attend the Sunday meeting. But you know, all the other kids are home watching Saturday morning cartoons, playing with their toys or whatever, and here you gotta go out and field service. It was worse is after doing an hour of door-to-door and maybe another hour or so of return visits, going on a long, boring-ass Bible study. All my mom's Bible studies used to be long and drawn out. She had this one study named Miss Barber. And this lady, she was a chain smoker. You know what I mean? Her house smelled like nut. It reeked of cigarettes. Then the lady would always have seizures. So it would be often that she would fall into a seizure during the study. You know, the seizures wouldn't last long. She might fall into a seizure for 5 or 10 minutes, then wake up out of it. Then my mom would want to continue on with the study. Then and those studies always lasted past the hour. I'm like, why do I have to go? Why can't you just bring my sister and that be enough? You don't need to have me, my sister, plus another sister that you brought along. You don't need to have 4 or 5 people accompanying you on a Bible study. And the thing is, this lady lived at Winfield, and she lived on the same block right down the street from a girl I went to school with and her brother, who was one of my homies. Now, they knew we were witnesses, but they weren't the type to run and tell everybody, because, you know what I mean, in school, people would clown you if they knew you was a witness. That's why in high school, a lot of people didn't know. Or the ones that did know were people that knew me from elementary school or whatever. But yeah, they would clown you. But I don't know if there's any more field service stories. I did the bare minimum. Besides those couple of months at Auxiliary Pioneer, I did the bare minimum in field service. Like I said, if I logged 6 hours a month, always added a 1 in front of that. It said I did 16 a month. So on average, if I was averaging 6-7 hours a month, I was putting anywhere from 16 to 27 hours a month. Yeah, I was beating and cheating the system. But anyway, this was just some Hawks talking Squawk. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for more content. Hawk out.